The Reds' biggest swing at the trade deadline should be for a closer.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Reds podcast. My name is Jeff Carr, and I'm a lifelong Cincinnati Reds fan. I'm glad that you're alongside me here today. I've been doing this podcast for now 7 seasons, and I'm always talking Reds, whether it's trade deadline season, draft season, preseason, postseason, offseason. We're here every single day because we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And on today's show, I want to preview the trade deadline and where the Reds stand, some guys that they could go for. They have needs, which include starting pitching depth, but I'm going to tell you a little bit later on the show why I think that's going to be hard to come by. They also need outfield help, as they have for the last couple of years, and there are plenty of options out there that aren't the biggest swings, but there is one really big swing that I think if they go for, that will probably be the only trade that they make. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes, but I want to begin with why the Reds need to make their biggest swing a trade for the closer. That's coming up on today's episode that is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. All right, the Cincinnati Reds need to make their biggest swing at this trade deadline a closer. And I believe this for multiple reasons. In fact, there are some guys who are available that they could get with multiple years of team control. But the biggest reason why is because coming into this season, Alexis Diaz was the guy. He's not here anymore. Right? Like, it was clear very early on, he wasn't the guy. He was a bad bet, wasn't going to work out. The Reds got the best that they could possibly get out of him these last couple of years. There was nothing left to give from Diaz. So they had to make some adjustments. Emilio Pagan has filled in admirably. But I believe that the best version of this team, and a team that I can feel confident about not only making a run to the playoffs, but playing well in October, includes a closer from the outside. I don't believe that October closer is here. There's plenty of options out there as well. Like, there have been rumors that the Minnesota Twins are receiving and fielding calls for Jhoan Duran and Griffin Jax. Now, Jhoan Duran is their closer. He is amazing. I mean, we're talking about one of the best closers in all of baseball. He has multiple years of team control, and he's pitching really well this year. He would be a very, very big swing, probably more expensive than you're thinking. I don't necessarily know that the Reds would basically have to do the reverse Tyler Mahle trade here, right? Like, the Reds don't need to give up the equivalent of Spencer Steer, Christian Encarnacion Strand, and one half of the Will Benson trade for Jhoan Duran, but it might not be that far off. Like, we're probably talking about a top prospect, maybe 2 top prospects, if that's what the Mets are looking for. And remember, Nick Krall said this offseason that when they're talking with other teams about trades in the offseason, people were talking about major leaguers coming back, not prospects. That's going to be an interesting thing to monitor about this trade deadline. Is that what teams are looking for? Because quite honestly, some of the sellers, some of the teams that you kind of expect to be in that seller category right now are not teams that are about to blow it up. The Minnesota Twins are not about to blow it up. The Baltimore Orioles are not about to blow it up. So the guys that they're going to be looking to get rid of are probably guys on expiring contracts. But Jhoan Duran could bring in a haul, and I think that the Reds have the ability to offer the Twins a very appetizing trade offer, something that they would really have to consider. Jhoan Duran is 27 years old, and he is controlled through next season. So if the Reds were to acquire him, it'd be for this year and for next, which would be a great big thing. But that also makes him more expensive. But he would easily make this bullpen a very confident October bullpen if you acquire him. There are a couple of other guys. These next 2 guys I think are pipe dreams, but they are worth discussing. And then there are 2 other guys who I think are a tier below Jhoan Duran and these next 2, but they're still worth discussing. The 2 that I think are just pipe dreams, Mason Miller or Emmanuel Clase. Both of these guys hail from teams that the Guardians are closer to the playoffs than the Athletics are. but I don't think either team is going to make it to the postseason. So there's a chance that the Guardians consider trading Emmanuel Clase, but that might be the most expensive trade that you have to make this deadline because he's far and away the best closer in baseball. I still believe it. I know he hasn't had the year this year like he did last year, but I still put him at the top. He is number one. So if you're going to acquire the number one closer in baseball, you're going to have to offer a really heck of a good deal. And it's going to be something that hurts to the point, like, I think him and then Mason Miller from the Athletics, either one of these guys, if the Reds were to somehow acquire them, when we talk about that trade, we're going to look at it and be, man, did they really give that up to get that guy? But those are the kind of guys, like you add Mason Miller or Emmanuel Clase to the top of the Reds bullpen, that would be amazing. All three of these guys are just absolute fireballers. Duran, Miller, and Clase just have crazy speed. They're all a little bit different in how they utilize it because Mason Miller is, man, power. And then Emmanuel Clase's got the cut fastball and a nice breaking ball to mix in with it. But ultimately, these guys are the S tier, the absolute top of the shelf. And it's amazing to even think that any one of them might be available. It sounds like Jhoan Duran is the most available of these three. There's a real good chance that Mason Miller's not even be talked about, people, but he is a constant trade rumor player, right? We always have that every single year. Like, it felt like for the longest time, Pirates outfielder Brian Reynolds was in every trade rumor with every team. But if the Reds have an ability, and if Nick Krall picks up a phone and talks to the Athletics, one of the first people he should be talking about is Mason Miller. And if he talks to the Guardians, one of the first people he should be talking about is Emmanuel Clase. And both the Reds and the Athletics and both the Reds and the Guardians have good trade relationships. We're not talking about the Reds trying to trade with the Cardinals or trying to trade with the Brewers or trying to trade with the Cubs or even the Pirates to where it's like a adversarial relationship. I think that they could get a deal done, but it would hurt. Both of those guys, and I think Jhoan Duran would hurt, but that would be the kind of move that turns everybody's head. Not everybody here in Cincinnati, not just everybody here in Cincinnati, but the entire nation. Everybody that covers baseball would go, oh, Tito just got who to be his closer? Let's go. Make that happen. But if you can't get one of these guys, there are still two other options out there that I think would still raise the profile of the bullpen enough for me to be super confident in it. That's Kenley Jansen from the Los Angeles Angels or Shelby Miller from the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, both of these guys are vastly different. Kenley Jansen, I'm not exactly sure how many more years he has left on his career. He has had a nice long career, really good career as a closer. Really hard to say if a closer is a Hall of Famer or not, but he has had quite the resume for his career, and he's actually had a nice little stretch of games recently. His last 12 appearances, he's not allowed a run. And in fact, when you look at his 38 total appearances this year, he's only allowed a run in 6 of those 38 appearances. And because he allowed 6 runs to Detroit on May 2nd, that's why you see his ERA in the atypical number for a closer. Like in the 3s, almost means like a closer's very inconsistent. And Kenley Jansen's kind of past the point in his career where we're talking about him being one of the best closers in baseball, but he still has a long track record of getting big outs in big situations, and that's the guy that you want leading your bullpen as you fancy yourself a playoff contender. Shelby Miller's different because Shelby Miller, you might remember, he began his career as a starting pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals, and he moved quickly to the Arizona Diamondbacks through free agency. He's moved from a starter's role to the bullpen over the last 5 years because ever since 2020, when he opted out of the COVID season, he's just moved to the bullpen full time. He's only made 1 total start in those last 5 seasons. But he has had a very good year this year, and he and Jansen both are limiting the walks like crazy. Kenley Jansen a little bit over a strikeout per inning during the season. Shelby Miller, not so much, but it's still a nice number. Like his strikeout to walk ratio is fine, and both of these guys limit the base runners really well. So I'd still be excited if the Reds were able to land one of those guys, but I would be most excited for Jhoan Duran because the Reds absolutely need to make their biggest swing at this trade deadline for a closer. there are outfield options out there as well, and you could probably even make the case that they can make an outfield trade on top of one of these closer trades. We'll dive into who and what it will take to acquire them coming up next. We're all looking for confidence in life, whether it's confidence in this Reds team or confidence that we're going to get a good deal on our next ticket purchase. That's where Game Time comes in, by the way. Game Time is going to give you all the confidence that you're getting the best deal on the best seat in the best place in the ballpark. They tell you where like the shade is. Like if you're going to a new ballpark, like you probably know, Great American, first base side, that's where the shade is for most of the games in the season. But Game Time's going to tell you whenever you're on the road and following the Reds along. Maybe you're going to New York, there in Flushing, Queens, to see the Reds play the Mets. Game Time's the best way to do that. They've got the last minute deals on the lowest prices guaranteed, and you're going to see your view from your seat as well. And if you download the app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, you'll also save $20 off your first purchase. So download Game Time today and use that promo code for $20 off your first purchase, because they've got great last minute deals at the lowest prices guaranteed. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast here on YouTube and on your favorite podcasting app. That way you don't miss any of the great Reds content that we've got coming for you all throughout the year. That also includes, once you subscribe, includes the Reds postcast with Tim Daniel. He's live after every game, the final out of every game, and it'll be in the audio feed shortly thereafter. And by the way, I'm solo here today. Steve had to work, but he will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to discuss a couple of things. We're going to get you set for the Mets series to start the second half of the season, and we're going to discuss how The Athletic labeled the Reds as sellers. Yeah, I'm not diving into that here on today's episode. Steve and I will talk about that tomorrow. But let's dive into the Reds being buyers, because I think they should be buyers. And it's clear that the biggest need for some years now has been the outfield. And while I didn't label that as the thing that they needed to take their biggest swing on, I think that there are plenty of options out there to shore it up and make me feel good about where the outfield stands. A couple of different ways they could attack this as well. There are some everyday guys out there. There's a pipe dream that I don't necessarily think the Reds will do, but it could be interesting if it happens. And then there's two platoon guys that I think would fit in nicely with Will Benson and Jake Fraley and all that good stuff. But let's start first with the guy that I want the Reds to go get the most, and that is Ramon Laureano. Ramon Laureano is on an expiring deal, so he's done after this year. He's going to be a free agent, and I think that alone helps his cost come down just a little bit. And he plays for the Baltimore Orioles, who will be keen on trading him. It's not as if you're going to have to make them an offer they can't refuse and force them to stay on the phone and say, are you really sure you want to hold on to Laureano? They're looking to deal him. And he's had a good season. I mean, he's up over 2 wins above replacement. He's hit the ball well. He actually has the best hard hit rate of his career currently during this season. So he's doing super well at the plate. And he has a long track record of being a good fielding outfielder. That it's not the best numbers for right now, but all of his career he has been a good fielding outfielder. And that's something that I feel like the Reds, if they can acquire it, should prioritize. Because obviously you want to improve the lineup, but I feel like right now the Reds outfield defense is a coin flip. Any fly ball that goes into the outfield, there's a good chance it's going to be caught. But let's talk about line drives. Let's talk about bouncing balls into the outfield. Let's talk about gap shots, things like that. The Reds just do not have the ability to really turn those marginal plays into outs in the outfield right now. Ramon Laureano would help them out greatly with that. And like I said, on an expiring deal, a little bit on the not the twilight, that sounds dramatic, but he's not young anymore. The point is here, we're not talking about a guy that's got multiple years of team control and is super young and all this other stuff, because that should help the Reds out in a negotiation, supposing that they're able to talk to Baltimore about this. Another guy that they could look at, and this guy for me, this is the pipe dream player. And honestly, I feel like if the Reds made this big swing, if they, instead of taking the big swing in the bullpen, took their big swing for Jhoan Duran. It's ironic that there's two Durans out there that are available, but Jhoan Duran, outfielder from Boston, if that's the guy that they go get, that's probably the only trade they make this trade deadline, because it's going to cost a lot. There were rumors out there, I think it was about a week ago, that the Twins were talking with the Red Sox about a trade for Jhoan Duran, that they would send to Boston starting pitcher Joe Ryan. And he's the guy that, if you saw any of the coverage around the All-Star game, he's the guy that people are asking, man, are the Twins going to trade Joe Ryan? And the Twins are saying, no, he's not being made available. But there are rumors that he was at least discussed in a trade package for Jhoan Duran. So that leads me to believe that if the Reds are on the phone with the Red Sox, what keeps them on the phone doesn't get the deal done, because I think they probably still need to give up more. But what keeps them on the phone is that Nick Krall offers up Nick Lodolo. That's what we're talking about here. So it would be a huge swing, maybe even a slightly questionable swing, to get Jhoan Duran at this trade deadline. So I don't know that I love that, because it's not going to cost that for Ramon Laureano. It's not going to cost that for any of the other guys that I have on this list, but it would cost a lot. And I've had some questions. I've had some folks ask me about the Reds possibly going after Jhoan Duran, because there's some sort of weird, and it seems very public and it seems very widely reported, log jam in the Red Sox outfield when it comes to Wilyer Abreu and Ceddanne Rafaela and Jhoan Duran and Roman Anthony. So many different guys. Like, must be nice to have too many outfielders, coming from a team that hasn't had too many outfielders in a very long time, if ever. But that's where the Red Sox are. That's why Jhoan Duran is even being talked about as a possible trade chip, because he's good. He's got over 2 wins above replacement. He was an MVP candidate last year. We're not talking about a mid player. We're talking about a good player. So a good player, lots of team control. It will cost a lot to acquire a guy like that. 2 guys I don't think you have to even approach that sort of a trade package for are Dane Myers from the Miami Marlins and Taylor Ward from the Los Angeles Angels. Everydayers will recognize those names. We've talked about them before. We've talked about Ramon Laureano before as well. But Dane Myers and Taylor Ward are names that we've talked about at different times. Taylor Ward was a common thread this past offseason, where I don't necessarily know that the Angels were ever looking to make a deal and trade him this past year. But they could be looking to deal him now, because the Angels are far enough out of the playoff race. They're close enough that they can squint and see it, but they're far enough that it's probably more prudent for them to be sellers. That's why I've listed Kenley Jansen on here, and that's why I have Taylor Ward on here as well. He's got 1 more year of control after this, so he's not going to be super cheap, but he's more of a platoon guy. Overall this season, he's not been the best when it comes against righties, but he mashes lefties. And he's an okay fielder. He's nowhere near as good as Laureano, and he's not even as good as Dane Myers, but he could be a very good option. A thread here, a common thread between Myers and Ward, is that they both mash lefties, so they would both be very good platoon pairings for Will Benson or Jake Fraley. Dane Myers mashes lefties well, but a much better fielder than Taylor Ward. The key with him, and probably the thing that makes him the hardest to get out of these non-Jhoan Duran outfielders that I'm listing here, is that he's 29 years old and he is under team control through 2029. So that would be a very smart move, a guy they could develop some more, even though he's not necessarily super young anymore. He's still not old, though, as far as being a Major League Baseball player is concerned. But he has lots of team control. So he will cost more than Taylor Ward, and he might arguably cost more than Ramon Laureano. Because the Marlins are in a weird place, and if you listen to our friend Sully over on Lockdown MLB, he is just absolutely baffled as to why the Marlins aren't like trying to build. And they're constantly in the rumors to be like, let's trade this guy, let's trade that guy. So it's possible that Dane Myers isn't available, but if I'm Nick Krall, I'm asking. And that's kind of where I'm looking at with this outfield, because I think that the Reds can shore up the outfield without breaking the bank. And that was my theme here with these guys, except for Jhoan Duran. That would be breaking the bank a little bit. But I don't think that mortgages the future. That just takes them out of the runnings for really any other impactful trade. Just go get Ramon Laureano. That's all I'm saying. But when it comes to their needs at the trade deadline, the Reds could stand to add some stability to their rotation, but that's going to be much harder to acquire than their other two main needs. If you can't watch us on YouTube, you can always listen to us on your favorite podcasting app. We're on all of them out there. Go check us out today. And after you're done watching today's show, go check out Locked On MLB. Sully's got you covered for all things All-Star break, trade deadline, lots of great conversation. We even have a great squad show up, and you can actually check that out here on the Locked On Reds feed as well, where we recap the All-Star game and the awesomeness that was. That was a lot of fun where, I got to talk with a bunch of different hosts from the channel. I encourage you to go check that out today. All right, the Reds could stand to add. I mean, honestly, looking at the situation, we talked a lot about Hunter Green yesterday and how the injury concern is real. And I think because of that, and because of the fact that they're not getting Williamson or Aguiar back till next year, Carson Spires is close-ish, but he's really the only guy that you trust a bunch. And then you have Wade Miley and Rhett Lauder, where if they had like a table and it said timetable ? And then it would just be a big question mark because we don't know. Like Wade Miley has said he's not retiring and he's going to work his way back, but there's no timeline for his return. And Rhett Lauder continues to be dealing with his injuries as well. So go get somebody, right? Well, trading for a starting pitcher this year will almost be impossible for the Reds, namely because of the Dodgers. Yep, here we go again. The Dodgers. It's the Dodgers' fault. The Dodgers. They spent all that money this offseason, and everybody got hurt. Because you cannot spend enough money to make your team invincible, as much as they might try. There's something going on over in L.A. Like everybody that was on their opening day pitching staff is basically injured. They're getting a couple of guys back here and there, but not to the point that they feel confident enough that everybody's going to be back in time for a deep October run, which quite frankly, their question isn't, are they going to get to October? Their question isn't even, are we going to win the division? The Dodgers' question is, are they going to win the World Series? And so that's what they're searching for. And there's absolutely no way that their front office can look at this and say, yeah, our pitching staff is going to get us through a World Series because they're so banged up. So the Dodgers are going to be wheeling and dealing, whether it be bullpen guys, but they're definitely going to be on the prowl for starting pitchers. I expect Sandy Alcantara will be in a Dodgers uniform by the end of the trade deadline, and maybe some other guys as well. So if the Reds look for starting pitching help, it's going to have to be like next level. Because I said Adrian Hauser on yesterday's podcast would be an amazing option, and he would. He's having a career year, but because of that, he's probably on the top of the Dodgers front office list as well. Like if they were growing into a grocery store, it's going to be Alcantara and Adrian Hauser at the top of that list. And so they're probably already on the phone with the White Sox trying to get a deal done. But Hauser is a pending free agent. Best year of his career by far. His ERA right now is 1.5. I think his best ERA in a season was above 3.5. So I wouldn't expect what he has done so far to just be what he does for the rest of the season. But his career puts him as a solid number 5 pitcher on pretty much any team, and that includes the Dodgers. But he would be an awesome get if the Reds could get him. The market's just going to be so thin, though, when it comes to attractive, available starting free agent or starting pitchers. And Adrian Hauser is going to be at the top of everybody's list. So, as awesome as that would be, we got to look a little bit deeper. And when I mean deeper, I mean we're getting a lot deeper. This is a guy that has a long track record of being a viable starting pitcher. He's not a guy that's finished high up in the Cy Young Award voting for a very long time, but he's also better than just going out and picking up somebody off the waiver wire. It's Kyle Hendricks. He's a free agent at the end of this season, currently pitching for the Angels right now. Remember, he pitched for like 400 years for the Chicago Cubs. But he's pitching with the Angels right now, and he's having a solid season. It's fine. He's got a 4.8 ERA. That's not amazing. And I'm not advocating that the Reds go get him and then immediately make him the guy who starts the very first playoff game this year. But he's a guy that you would be happy about saying, all right, we're not sure when Hunter Green's coming back. We're not sure when Rhett Lauder's coming back. If anyone else gets hurt, then we're just begging Carson Spires to be ready. If the Reds had Kyle Hendricks, I would feel better about it. And because he's a pending free agent and he's over the age of 35, there's a really good chance he's not going to cost all that much, especially if the Angels are able to move guys like Tyler Anderson, or if they even decide to make a trade of Jose Soriano, who's having an amazing season as well. They would get a lot more for those guys than they would get for Kyle Hendricks. But that's why I think that if the Reds are going to add starting pitching depth, it's clearly the third most important priority on their list. So treat it like that. Don't overspend. Like it's a tendency for us as fans to treat it like MLB The Show and say, all right, the Reds need a bullpen guy, an outfielder, and a starting pitcher. So obviously they go get Emmanuel Clase, and they go get Jhoan Duran, and they go get Adrian Hauser, or they go get Sandy Alcantara. We just pick the top of each available player and just go get him. But that's not how it works. Because there's likely that the Reds can offer a really good package for one of those needs, not for all of them. As much as I talk about the Reds can address their needs at this trade deadline without mortgaging the future because of their deep farm system, it would take quite a bit to get the best available player at each position of need. That would be mortgaging the future. And again, Adrian Hauser, free agent after this year. So it's hard to really sign up for that. The Dodgers, whatever, right? The Dodgers could give up 2 top prospects for Adrian Hauser tomorrow, still be a top 10 farm system next year because of how much money they have and how much they're able to scout and bring in from international signings and drafts and other trades that they can make that they just reload. And there's so many different things. I wish the Reds operated like that, but the Reds don't have this ownership group that seemingly has money that they just print. We understand this. I understand this. You understand this. We would love it if that were the case, but the Reds do not have bottomless pockets. They have to attack this smartly. And attacking this smartly probably means they either don't trade for a starting pitcher or they trade for a guy like Kyle Hendricks. That's not going to be sexy. We're not going to be jumping on here and saying they're going to the World Series because they got Kyle Hendricks. But we're going to be saying, boy, we feel a lot better about this starting pitching staff moving forward because they added to the depth. And that is my point when it comes to the starting pitcher market. It's super thin, and on top of the fact that it's super thin, you have the most aggressive teams, like front office wise, who are looking at this same thin market. And the Reds will have to be a little bit savvy if they really want to dive in to that starting pitching market. I appreciate you for checking out today's Locked On Reds podcast. That's going to wrap it up for us here today. Coming up, like I said, tomorrow, Steve will be back. We'll be previewing the Mets series, and we'll be discussing the fact that a couple of guys at The Athletic believe that the Reds are sellers. It's not C. Trent or Ken Rosenthal or anybody like that, but their point is interesting. And I think that it's not something that I completely dismiss right away, although I still believe that the Reds are buyers. But Steve and I will discuss that on tomorrow's podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Reds part of your day, part of your everyday routine. For our everydayers out there, thank you so much. If you're not an everydayer, hit that subscribe button. When you do, you also get the Reds postcast with Tim Daniel that he goes live at the end of every Reds game, and it'll be in your audio feed shortly thereafter. Now, for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB. Sully's got you covered with all things Major League Baseball, keeping you up to date on the league as a whole. And he's going to use his unique brand of humor to deliver that to you as well. But as for me, I'm going to be Locked On Reds every single day.